All right, outsiders, welcome back and welcome in. It's been a long road, but the NFL offseason is coming to a close. Football is right around the corner. A lot of training camps today on Tuesday, July 25th got started, and a lot of news dropped today. We're going to talk about a lot of that stuff, some of the things we missed during our little summer vacation. Dylan Mel and Corey Jason here with me tonight. I'm Ryan Balliot, and we're just excited to get back. So we're going to jump in here. Quick reminder, make sure you follow us on our social accounts at Outsider Sports 3 over on Twitter. You check out Dylan's show, Running Up the Score podcast. You can follow him too on Twitter, Dylan Mel. He puts out a lot of great content. We were talking about some of it during the pre-show meeting we always have. Some of the things we're going to talk about here tonight. One of the biggest stories coming into the 2023 NFL season, the landscape of the running back position. Sort of reminiscent of what's going on over in Hollywood right now. Actors and writers both on strike. There's a lot of displeasure with the running backs right now. I guess they had a Zoom call a few days ago. There's some developments with that. We'll touch on that. The future of Washington football. Dan Snyder is out. The new crew is in. Brighter days maybe finally ahead for Washington. Maybe not. One of the biggest player movements that we missed during our break, DeAndre Hopkins. We're going to talk about that. But let's get started with some of the news from today, guys. Some big paydays just an hour before us hopping on here. Justin Herbert, 5 years, over $260 million. He is the new highest paid quarterback. What is your guys' initial reactions to that for Justin Herbert?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty big fan of the move. Not sure how much you guys know, but Oregon Ducks college team. So love to see my boy Herbie getting paid. We talked about this a little bit in the pre-show. Does he deserve it? Does he not? Listen, we know that the talent is there, and at this point in pro sports, money is money. Extensions go out like crazy. He's the highest paid this week. Next week it'll be Joe Burrow. Give it 3 years, and he'll be down to the eighth highest paid quarterback. The point is, he's talented. You have to lock a guy like that up. He's got all these records for passing yards at the youngest age, this and that. We know he's a beast. You bring in Kellen Moore. Let's see some work.
I don't hate it again, Dylan, like you said, and I agree. He's going to go down to the eighth highest quarterback, the ninth, the 10th. Just give it a couple years. We see these exuberant contracts, right? And they seem like they're ridiculous in the amount of money for quarterbacks. But after a couple years, they seem pretty in line with the rest of the market. And I don't want to even say team friendly, but it's kind of the way it goes. Just think of Mahomes, right? When Mahomes got that massive deal, right? People thought it was just insane. And I think he is like the sixth or seventh highest paid quarterback in the league now. So that's a really team friendly deal. And that's what happens. And I think it was best for the Chargers that Herbert got it done before Burrow because they got to set the market and now Burrow gets to break it and reset it. And that's kind of like with other positions. I'm always an advocate of get your guy locked up early because you want to be the one that sets it because you'll end up getting the best value in the lowest market for it. Now, Herbert, on the other hand, has he really earned it? It's a different question. No playoff wins. Should have won the one game against the Jaguars. He's kind of been like a regular season quarterback, kind of like the last Chargers great quarterback, right? Somebody who just wasn't really able to get it done. I am hopeful that he'll be able to turn that around. I think he's got more than enough talent, a great supporting cast, right? But he just hasn't done it. So this is almost like a show me deal, right? Like we gave you the money, now show us why you're worth it because he really didn't earn it. He didn't win anything, but they know what he can do. And I think ultimately it is the best for him and the team because he's locked up. He's going to have to go against Mahomes for, the next 5 years of the deal. But why not? If you want to beat the best, you got to beat the best, right?
Yeah, exactly. I believe Mahomes, I think I saw on Twitter, I'm not calling it X, it's Twitter, of Mahomes, I think is actually ninth now. So he'll be just at the back end of the top 10 when Joe Burrow does get his deal. But over the other side of the ball, Trevon Diggs, the corner in Dallas, 5 years, $97 million. I believe highest paid corner. Does he deserve it? Because we know the yardage that he gives up. He
Oh,
gets the interceptions,
I think
but
this is great. Great for Dallas. They needed to lock up their guy. Like you said,
Preach,
Corey, pay him early. Set the
preach.
market. For those that are just tuning in for the first time, you could probably tell Corey's a Giants fan. I'm an Eagles fan, so we're pretty happy about Diggs being around in our division for a while. Listen, all the hate aside, I think he's become overhated. He was overrated when he had that year with a ton of interceptions. The way he plays the cornerback position, very aggressive. It leads to him being burned a lot. It leads to him getting a lot of picks. He's a solid corner. I don't think he's the best corner in football, so I don't think he should be paid that high. But again, like we talked about Justin Herbert, you set the market, and then in a year, 2 years, you'll be back down. Does he deserve to be paid like an elite cornerback? Make your judgment there. If you're Dallas, your window is now, so I get going for it.
Yeah, I mean, Diggs the year he got all those interceptions. He was really a bad cornerback. He made the flashy plays, but he gave up an incredible amount of yards. He could not keep up with any receiver because everything he wanted to do was jump the route, catch the ball, make a splashy play, which is great, but he gave up a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. He's kind of moved away from it last year. He didn't have the interception numbers, but he was much better at actually being a cornerback and covering receivers. I don't think Diggs is among the top 5 best corners in the league, but he's certainly one of the top 10. He is a good corner, right? He's a good player. I just don't know if he's worth all that money. But like Herbert, like you said, set the market early. But also, he does sell jerseys, right? He does put butts in seats. Him, Parsons, Dak, those are your guys that you market. So you want to pay that. You want to keep that around. Whether he's worth it or not, the Cowboys have always been good at finagling the cap. I kind of envious of that, to be honest. They're always able to figure it out. That's why I'm not worried about them with the Zach Martin situation where he's holding out of camp, right? He wants more money because he was that contract he had. They were able to push money, finagle it, so they were able to keep and sign a lot of guys. Maybe they'll do that with Diggs now. Nice 5-year deal, right? Be able to switch some of that money, put some dummy years on. And that's what the Cowboys are good at, finding loopholes in the salary cap structure. And the best way to do it, long-term deals that you're able to switch the guaranteed money around and create cap space. And that Diggs contract is going to be a great safe haven for them to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, just real quick, they brought in Stephon Gilmore. That's a guy that can teach Diggs to clean up some of, his flaws. And, Gilmore won a Defensive Player of the Year at the corner position, which is super hard to do. We know that guy's got the intelligence, even though he's lost a step at the position.
yeah, he's a few years removed from that Defensive Player of the Year award. But I mean, Colts won 4 games last year, and Gilmore was directly responsible for like 2 of them. So definitely thankful for Gilmore in his short stint in Indy. But yeah, Corey, you mentioned Zach Martin holding out. Another big name holding out over in the Bay Area, Nick Bosa, not reporting to training camp. Remember, his brother, as a rookie, did one of the rare rookie holdouts. Now, Nick Bosa doing at the end of his rookie deal. But some other big news I want to talk about here in the Bay Area. Brock Purdy cleared today from that UCL injury. I know, Corey, you mentioned it, and Ben too.
Shocked.
Yeah, that UCL injury, you said his career could potentially be over, but here he is, cleared, throwing, and in the driver's seat to be San Francisco's quarterback 1 for the year.
Let me see him take a hit. Let me see him get his arm hit from behind as he's throwing, get him into some real game action. I'm shocked that he's even able to play in training camp right now, not starting on PUP at least. But good for him. I'm rooting for him. It's a nice story. Mr. Irrelevant turned, almost Super Bowl caliber quarterback, right? So I'm glad that it's working out for him. I'm surprised that he's not too hurt. But let's see him actually take some shots and get hit before we really say he's back, right?
Yeah, also Jimmy Graham. Don't call it a comeback. He signed a 1 year, yes, year, not day, contract with the Saints. We'll see. Maybe it's just a morale boost or something like that. We see this. I remember Tebow's short-lived comeback. He was cut by the time preseason was over, but funny nonetheless. Jimmy Graham back with the Saints.
Yeah, I'm shocked there. Jimmy Grandpa back in New Orleans, and they have like a loaded tight end room too. Jawan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Taysom Hill, and it's just odd to see them bring him in. I don't know if this is just like a cam thing, like you said, or maybe they're like, hey, we want a really tall guy for red zone specials, and that's it.
Maybe they're just finally treating him like a wide receiver, and he's the wide receiver for. Remember, he wanted to get paid like a receiver back in the day, and they said no. But Hopkins, he got paid like a receiver, one of the better ones around the league. The rumor was he was going to get traded out of Arizona. I thought it could happen on draft night. It didn't. No trade ever came to fruition. He ends up just getting released. He sits on the market for a while. He says, I want to go play for a great quarterback with great management and a great defense. And he ends up in Tennessee. I'll give him the management part. They've been pretty stable the last couple of years. I think they have a good defense, but Ryan Tannehill, Malik Willis, you guys know my opinion on Will Levis. This was the right move for Tennessee. They needed a weapon. I think we could all agree on that. If Traylon Burks is your number one, you have a problem. Was this the right move for D-Hop?
Yeah, there's no doubt this was the right move for Tennessee, especially the 2-year deal, right? You could still be a potential wild card playoff team this year. We saw Tennessee in the playoff picture the last couple of years. Vrabel is an excellent head coach. They have a fantastic defensive line. And if Tannehill still has something with a true wide receiver one, when they had A.J. Brown, they were a playoff team. Now, DeAndre Hopkins isn't where A.J. Brown currently is, obviously. But maybe they could battle, but in a really competitive AFC, I'm not so sure. But I think it's really good for the development of Traylon Burks to be able to play against cornerback twos, find his way. Obviously, it'll be good for Derrick Henry that you can't just stack the box. But the 2-year deal is huge. Whether it's Will Levis or Malik Willis, Ryan Tannehill is going to be out of that starting spot next year. To have a target like DeAndre Hopkins is huge for their development. Now, whether or not it's the right move for D-Hop, I think it really depends on what was out there. Is your choices New England and Tennessee, and that was it? If so, then sure, I guess I'd rather live in Nashville than Foxborough. I guess, right? Like, either way, crappy quarterback play, not a ton of other weapons around you, probably not real playoff aspirations, but a solid contract for DeAndre Hopkins. One last good payday, I think. Like the reports came out that the Bills weren't willing to pay up. The Chiefs, we knew, were never going to pay up. And DeAndre Hopkins chose money over a Super Bowl. Love it or hate it. It's his choice. I don't mind it. Go get your bag. But I'm just disappointed. I don't think we're ever going to get to see a high-level DeAndre Hopkins in a meaningful playoff game.
Bill O'Brien really ruined his career, didn't he? Sending him over to that Death Valley in Arizona to have Kyler throw the ball to him. I feel bad for D-Hop. He was such a dominating receiver. He should have kind of done it like Calvin Johnson and just called it quits pretty early on. I think this probably was the right move for both sides. D-Hop gets to be the unquestioned number one receiver. He gets all the targets he wants. The only other person that'll get more attention than him is Derrick Henry. So if he thinks that he's still at that top level, the Titans is the best place because they still have a legit playoff shot, like you said, right? The division isn't on lock by anybody. The Colts, the Jags, those are all teams that could compete with the Titans, but it's anybody other than the Texans division to win. And I think that's a good spot for him. Tannehill's not terrible. He's a good game manager. He'll get him the ball. And that's really all you want. If his other option was the Patriots, like Dylan said, the division's kind of out of reach. Wild card, maybe, but you're going to get beat down by at least 2, if not 3 teams in your division. Is it really worth it? Especially to play for a hard-nosed coach like Belichick. I know Vrabel cut from that cloth, Belichick guy, but he's really loved down in Tennessee. I think this is just the best for both. And not every guy's about winning. They want the money, right? He's more than earned it, especially with what has gone on in his career with getting screwed over and traded. If he really wanted to go to the Chiefs, he could have done a 1 year deal, played well, then got the bag in the offseason next year. But you know what? Good on him for getting the money that he got. Maybe he does do something, gets traded from the Titans to somewhere else. Maybe he has a good 2 years and can get another bag from another team for another, 2 year set. But I think both sides, it's a pretty good fit.
Randy Moss, Andre Johnson, Julio Jones, couple Hall of Fame, all-world caliber players. Their careers, last report being seen in Nashville. So we'll see if DeAndre Hopkins can change the narrative there. Over to Washington. Pop the champagne bottles. Dan Snyder is no longer an NFL owner. Josh Harris and a big group of investors, including Magic Johnson. Love to see that. They're the new owners of the Washington Commanders. And brighter days certainly, I think, are finally ahead. Maybe not this year. Tough division still. But what is just the future? When you first heard this news, what do you hope to see? Obviously, you guys division rivals, so you don't want to see them too successful. But at least everything's straightened out and all of this nonsense with Snyder and the investigations in the rear view. What do you guys think Washington will look like in a couple years?
I mean, they're in our division, right? But I wouldn't call them rivals. It's a three-headed monster rival in that division, right? Washington's kind of like the guy sitting in the corner watching everybody else have the fun.
Their baby
And
brother.
I mean, if you want to go that direction, sure.
They're the guy that gets beat up on Thanksgiving by whichever other team gets the game.
It's just good for them is kind of like how I look at it, right? Like you want to see everybody succeed. You want competition. While it was funny watching the whole thing unfold, and I don't think we're done hearing about Snyder and Gruden and the whole football team commanders debacle. I don't know what this new ownership group's going to bring because you just like other teams in other sports, you can take, Snyder out of Washington, but can you really take Washington away from Snyder? Like his imprint and what he did is still there. It's not going anywhere just because there's a new ownership group. It's going to take years to remove that stink. So their present and future is still marred by him. It's going to take a while. You see it with the Mets, right, in baseball with Steve Cohen. He was thought to be the savior of the team. But the Wilpon stank's still there. It's still going. And it takes time for it to move away and to get out of it. So I think it's going to be a while before we see the Washington really kind of get to where they could be. And they're going to still be suffering. Their future is not bright right now. I think they're probably going to go through another couple quarterbacks before they get some stability there. I'm not a big Howell believer, but this is the first baby step before they can get, the ability to run with the big dogs.
Yeah, listen, Snyder had to go. Everybody could agree on that, no matter what team you're a fan of. And Josh Harris, those people that don't know, ownership group for the 76ers right now, competitive team. Magic Johnson, a part of the Dodgers ownership group, competitive team. I expect Washington in the farther future, I don't want to say near future, but in the farther future, to be a competitive team once again. As well, already talks of the rebrand. And it's funny, people are complaining about it, yet when the Commander's name came out, everybody hated it. So which one is it? Do you want the rebrand? Do you not?
Bring back the football team.
Yeah, there's some presence for people that like the football team name. I don't think that
I
they're
am
going to
full in that. I want it.
I don't think they're going to go there, but I think they're going to rebrand and do what they can to get rid of the Dan Snyder stank. Whatever they can do to get rid of it. Whatever they can do to get rid of any imprint he had on that team. Right now, we know quarterback's king. Is Sam Howell the future? Probably not. But, we'll see. The Commanders, hopefully brighter days are ahead for them, but brighter days are ahead for the NFL now that Snyder is gone.
For sure. Let me throw out there 2028 NFC East Division winners, the Washington Red Wolves with Pro Bowl quarterback Caleb Williams. Doesn't matter who their running backs are, though, because the running back position might be joining their brothers of the fullbacks. Maybe not that dire, but there's certainly a negative energy surrounding one of the game's visibly lesser important positions. Earlier today, Saquon Barkley came up with an $11 million one-year deal with the New York Giants that almost seems a slight shift away from the franchise tag, but essentially it's the same thing. You know, there's some of the semantics that goes in with that. Josh Jacobs still, I don't believe they haven't reached anything. Last I heard, you have guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook still in the free agent market. Joe Mixon took a pay cut just to remain with the Bengals. Austin Eckler just saw his quarterback get a massive payday. You have to wonder, is there any left for me? And then this guy right here, Jonathan Taylor, put on the PUP list earlier today after Jim Irsay said he's healthy and good to go. Early speculation is that it was contract related for why he was put on that list. Um, and I mentioned it too at the start of the show. We're not going to see running backs just go on strike. You know, it's different than the actors and writers, what's going on in Hollywood. But I mean, something needs to get done. Dylan, you put out a great video. If you want to just kind of share the bullet points quick, and then I mean, how could we reach an agreement? Let's act as the mediators here, quick. Running backs and the NFL. Where can we find common ground here?
Yeah, so this situation has so many different layers to it that are going to be broken down over years to come. Generally, in my video, it was more of a defense of why elite level guys like Saquon Barkley shouldn't have to settle for fighting for a payday with what they mean to their offense. A lot of that I went into the fact that Daniel Jones is another level quarterback with Saquon Barkley than without him. It's not a you're playing with Patrick Mahomes and he doesn't really need you. Or even in Austin Eckler's situation, if Justin Herbert's that level quarterback, you'd argue why pay the running back. But for Daniel Jones, a guy who makes less than the top level quarterback, you have that money left over to pay Saquon, who makes things easier on him, in my opinion. And he's an elite level guy. And Saquon's a good locker room guy. Some of this, it's got to come into the real world too. This isn't just a Madden video game where you're going around the cap sliders trying to figure it out. Saquon's been in that Giants locker room through the bad seasons. He's been the face of the franchise. He sells the jerseys. He puts the butts in seats. Some of that has to matter when it comes to paying him. And Saquon is such a good guy that he took this deal today. And you mentioned the semantics. We could talk about it. $1 million in potential incentives plus $2 million of it in signing bonus. So he got it in his bank account today instead of over the course of the season. If you call that a win, fine. But now you got to report to training camp. It didn't feel like a win for the running back position today. And now that poses the problem going forward in the future. The running back position, if Saquon can't even get a payday, who can? The answer, probably nobody for the foreseeable future. And, that's the way that life works in a sense. There's so many good running backs now that you don't have to pay, which I understand that's how it works. The problem is the trickle-down effect that has. And it can go a lot of different ways right now. The new NFL Players Association agreement, it's not up for like 7 years. So we're not going to see a change to this. The owners aren't going to budge. The owners have kind of dog walked the players when it comes to this in terms of finances. The players fight for bye weeks and, less drug testing, and they win those battles. But when it comes to money, I mean, the owners kind of are winning the battle a lot of times. So now they're not going to fold and be like, oh, well, let's be nice to the running backs and put in an amendment for them. But what that's going to lead to with NIL deals, the top tier running backs that aren't your Bijan Robinson, but are your third and fourth and fifth round draft picks, but you're at a school where you can make $2-3 million in NIL deals. Why would you leave? Probably won't. As well, it's going to lead to even further down. Your top tier young athletes at 12, 13, 14, when you know that you're special and you could be an NFL player, what parent's going to tell their kid to play the running back position? You're going to go be a receiver, go be a quarterback. Hell, you're better off going and being a cornerback at this point than you are being a running back. The only position paid less than them is the kickers and punters. So there's going to be a long-lasting effect here. Eventually, since there's going to be so less elite running backs, then the running back position will become scarce, and we'll have the full circle of life in terms of the NFL running back being paid. I think in the foreseeable future, though, we could see a lot more Deebo Samuel-esque players. You got a skillful wide receiver, let him run the ball. because there's not going to be a lot of great athletic running backs in the NFL in 5 to 7 years.
I'm going to argue that the running back position actually died a few years ago. It's not dying, it's dead. Once you introduced, the catching back and they became the bigger guys like a Barkley, a McCaffrey, right? Those guys that can catch. Kamara was good at that. Guys that are really able to run routes and play almost a dual role as it was while having that running back moniker, kind of the precursor to the Debo type. That's when the running back position died because you had those really talented players now pigeonholed as a different position than what they were really being asked to do. So the running back position is gone. It has changed. And, on the Barkley front, as a Giant fan, I want my team's cap health to be great. You see teams in our division, the Cowboys and Eagles, who have been able to work the cap forever. The Saints have been another team that has really been able to work it. The Giants never were able to do that. And now to have a GM that's really looking at the future and not the present and how to actually build up a team and a roster to be competitive, it's nice to see. And, I don't want it to be at the expense of one of my favorite players. But do you guys know who the longest tenured Giant is? It's Sterling Shepard, but you thought it was Saquon for a second because Saquon's the second longest tenured Giant now. So the fact that he's been with this team through the dark times, Saquon deserves it. And the Giants did offer him enough money to be paid along the likes of a Derrick Henry or a Nick Chubb. Is Saquon definitively better than either of those two guys? No, he's not. Saquon is a very good player, definitely an arguable top 5 running back when he's healthy. I think even better. But does he deserve to get paid more than a Chubb or a Henry who are always available? No. But he wanted the same aligned money of a Kamara and a McCaffrey, which those are guys that missed a lot of time, guys that, are pass catching backs, but that's not where the market's going now. Saquon had some bad people around him, gave him some false hope about what the market could bring, right? So Saquon was offered more than fair compensation for what the market is, and he kind of screwed himself. And, I'm glad that him and the Giants were able to basically get a deal done. And it's interesting that they didn't have a, we won't tag you next year clause in good faith, right? The fact that they didn't have that, I find it very interesting because the Giants could very well go and do that next year.
They're absolutely going to. They're
I don't
absolutely
think
going.
so.
They're going to
No,
tag him again.
No, I think that they'll get a long-term deal done because I think they used the tag on Xavier McKinney. I think that's a more pressing matter to tag McKinney if you can't get a deal done with him.
I
Then
think
Barkley.
if Saquon takes a team-friendly deal, they'll get a long-term deal done, which, with the shelf life that we've seen of running backs, it could be the right move.
If depending
Taking
on
$8
Dalvin
million
Cook,
a year over 3 years could look really good for Saquon
Yeah.
in 2 years' time versus holding out, getting tagged again, getting a 1 year, $11 million deal, and then being like Zeke Elliott. Nobody wants you now.
nobody wants you. Leonard Fournette, same thing. Dalvin Cook's still out there, right?
Yeah, still out there.
Yeah.
Miami's the rumored team, but they're not willing to pay up either.
No. So Barkley might be safer to just stay where where the offense will go through you, where you'll have success after football, right? Being a beloved player in the biggest media market in the world. You won't have to, work hard for your money. You'll be a face everybody knows. So taking a team friendly deal, which probably isn't going to actually be team friendly if you think about it, they will overpay him just to keep him around. But overpaying him might look like $9-10 million a year, $8 million a year. But what Cook gets, what Miles Sanders got, that's going to all play into this. And I think Barkley made the right decision to try to get for it, but it bit him in the butt. And I don't think he can go through another year like this.
Yeah, you touched on it, Corey, and I mentioned it as well in my video. The smart GMs, they're not paying the running back position. Brett Veach, GM of the Chiefs, who was their leading runner in the Super Bowl, a 7th-round pick. The Eagles, Howie Roseman, their entire running back room makes up a cap of $7.2 million. That's 4 or 5 guys. That's exactly what Miles Sanders is getting from Carolina this season. So, the smart guys are going that direction. The one thing that I wonder is when we get to that inevitable point where, we talk about this in terms of NFLPA. Do we get rid of the second franchise tag on running backs? Do we get rid of it altogether? That way they can vie for that second contract? Or do you think by the time we get there, they're just going to be SOL and it's going to be, yeah, but us quarterbacks, wide receivers, everybody else got their money. In the NFL, there's not just a cap maximum, there's a cap minimum. 190 to 210's got to be spent. So while running backs are losing it, it's going somewhere else. You have to spend it. So that wide receiver's getting paid, that corner's getting paid, the quarterback's getting more money, maybe a second tight end. Somebody's getting the money.
So I think probably the best way to go about this, and I'm sure you guys have heard this type of theory before, take out the quarterback, take out the kicker and punter when it comes to the tag, right? It's a factor of, the top, I believe, 5 salaries at your position averaged together. Instead of having it by position, you kind of do it just in general, offensive, defensive, however you want to shake it, the whole roster type of deal. Again, quarterbacks, special teams taken out of it because that's not really fair. But let that be the predictor then, because then you won't get guys like Saquon and others even being thought of to be tagged, and you'd be able to go explore your own deals and not have that even affect you. I think that's probably the best course of action because you're not going to fix it. And the tag is way too valuable that the owners will die on that and keep the league in a lockout. I think 2030 is when the next possible talks are about a new agreement. So it's going to be a ways away, and I think there's going to be a lot more discussion. I thought it was interesting that the running backs went on a Zoom call and talked about what to do. I think letting it slip that they were going to fake some injuries and stuff kind of is a bad look on them. You kind of lose the court of public opinion doing that. Yeah, you can't, fake injuries and hurt people's favorite teams. They only like you, but only when you're wearing their colors. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
the
it's
one issue I just want to point out real quick with the franchise tag, if you take away quarterbacks and kickers, you still have defensive ends that make 30 million a year.
yeah,
You still have offensive tackles that, so there's some, kinks to work out. Maybe it's a skill position on the offensive side tag. Again, we'll see. Do running backs take it smart? These college running backs, do they risk their NFL career staying another year at college to get that 2 to 3 million of NIL money? Or do you take the 4-year contract of being a second round pick? There's going to be a lot of behind the scenes that really pan out for the running back position.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of different kind of ideas thrown out there. I've seen, even you get mentioned talking about the franchise tag. Go back 5 years and look at the prices for the franchise tag. Every single position since then has gone up, except the running back is the only one that went down. It's actually cheaper to franchise tag a running back now than it was a few years ago. You could make running backs ineligible for the franchise tag. Just Corey, you throwing that idea out about full just the salaries in general around the league. What about the top 5 on the team using the tag on that running back? They're top 5 players on that team to kind of go in line with that. The one I kind of like the most is actually running backs getting drafted are on 3-year deals. So they get to that second contract a little bit earlier.
you'll
And
never
that way
see a top 3 round running back ever again.
still, I mean, if they go later in the draft, then they can hit that second payday. That seems the big problem here is, teams drafting a running back. Isaiah Pacheco, we might forget about him in a few years' time. I mentioned before we started recording Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. These running backs, Todd Gurley, they just fall off the map after their rookie deal. Maybe they get that big payday. Look at Le'Veon Bell, held out for a year, got his money, disappeared.
That's
That's the
also why
unfortunate.
teams don't want to pay those guys. If you give Todd Gurley the contract that we're begging for Saquon Barkley to get here, now like your team is capsized because you paid a position that has no shelf life. So again, there's so much argument there. Should the rookie contracts be higher for these running backs because you're penalized for being good early? Bijan Robinson this year is going to get 200 to 300 touches. and they're going to run him into the ground this rookie contract, and he's going to be so good. And then by the time his second contract goes, they're going to be like, whew, there's a lot of wear and tear on them tires,
Yeah.
Bijan. No payday for you.
He's like, that's
No.
why I like the argument of
Yeah.
when they come up in the draft, their contracts, it's 4 years. And if you're in the first round, you have that 5th-year option, just 3 flat. If they perform wherever they're drafted, round 1, round 7, undrafted, whatever, they could get to that second payday while their shelf life is not yet over.
I have an even better fix than that. Tell me where I'm wrong. Get rid of a salary cap. Salary caps are inhumane. Let it be like baseball. Spend as much money as you want. Build them rosters. Pay them people. Win some Super Bowls.
Hey, I'll pay.
Small market teams are toast.
No such thing. Never was.
I'll pay whatever is asked to get Damian Lillard on the Heat. But this isn't a basketball podcast. This is a football podcast. Football is back, and we're going to be back next week. We're going to do division deep dives. We're going to get started with the NFC North. So join us next week. Take care, everybody. Remember, do not draft Kyle Pitts in the 3rd round of your fantasy drafts this year. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Outsider Sports Football Podcast.